You meet someone new. They smile, they shake your hand, they say their name clearly. 5 seconds later, it's gone. Not blurry, not half remembered. Just gone, like it never entered your head at all. You nod along, you keep talking, and the entire time, a quiet panic is building in the back of your mind. What was that name? Here's the strange part. You can remember their job. You can remember they mentioned a trip to Portugal. You can even remember the exact shirt they were wearing. But the one piece of information they handed you on purpose, the name, slipped straight through your fingers. Why does your brain do this to you every single time, no matter how hard you try? Most people assume this means something is wrong with them. Bad memory, not paying attention, getting older. But the truth has almost nothing to do with how smart you are or how much you care. The real explanation lives deep inside how memory actually works, and once you understand it, you'll never look at an introduction the same way again. Start with what your brain is doing the moment someone says their name. You're not just hearing a sound, you're processing a face, a voice, a posture, the context of the room, and a string of social signals, all at the same time. Your brain has limited bandwidth for new information, a concept the psychologist Alan Baddeley spent decades studying through what he called working memory. Working memory is like a small countertop in your mind. Only a few items fit on it before something gets pushed off to make room. A name is one of those items, but it's a strange one. Unlike a face, which is rich with visual detail your brain can hook onto, a name is what researchers call arbitrary information. There's no logical connection between the sound Sarah and the actual person standing in front of you. Your brain has nothing to attach it to. It's just a label floating in space. And floating labels are the easiest things in the world to lose. Compare that to everything else you absorb in those same 5 seconds. The shirt color, the job title, the story about Portugal. Those pieces of information connect to things you already know. You have categories for jobs, memories of beaches, associations with colors. A name has none of that scaffolding. It arrives alone, with nothing to hold on to, and your brain treats it accordingly. This isn't just a theory. In 1987, researchers Carrie McWeeny, Hayden Ellis, and colleagues ran a study where they showed participants the exact same biographical facts about strangers. Sometimes a fact was labeled as the person's name. Sometimes the identical word was labeled as their hobby or occupation. The participants consistently forgot the word more often when it was presented as a name. The information was identical, only the label changed. And that one change was enough to make it vanish from memory far more often. Here's the interesting part. This isn't a flaw in your memory. It's a feature of how memory was built. Your brain evolved to prioritize information that helps you predict and survive, not information that helps you be polite at a party. For most of human history, remembering that a berry was poisonous mattered far more than remembering that a stranger was named Tom. Names are a relatively modern social convention layered on top of a brain that was optimized for something else entirely. But there's more happening in that moment than just a weak memory trace. The instant you hear a new name, a small wave of social pressure floods your mind. You start thinking about how you're coming across. You think about whether you'll remember it later. You might even rehearse a fake confident response in your head before you finish processing what was just said. That mental noise competes directly with the very thing you're trying to remember. This is sometimes called the next-in-line effect, first explored by psychologist Diane Bond in the 1980s. She noticed that people often fail to remember information presented right before they have to speak or perform socially, because their attention shifts inward toward self-monitoring instead of outward toward listening. Meeting someone new is exactly this kind of moment. You're not fully listening. You're half listening and half preparing your own response, smiling, nodding, thinking about what to say next. The name gets caught in that gap and quietly disappears. So what actually helps? Not trying harder. Trying harder doesn't add scaffolding, and scaffolding is what a name needs to stick. What works is connection. The psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus, working over a century ago, discovered something called the forgetting curve, showing that new information fades rapidly within minutes unless something reinforces it. Repetition early on can interrupt that fade. Saying the name back almost immediately, "Nice to meet you, Sarah," gives your brain a second exposure before the trace has a chance to vanish. But repetition alone is fragile. The deeper fix is giving the name something to attach to, the same kind of scaffolding your brain naturally builds for everything else. If Sarah reminds you of a teacher you had, or rhymes with a word, or matches an unusual feature of her face, your brain now has more than just a floating label. It has a connection point, and connected information survives in memory far longer than isolated information ever does. There's also a quieter twist here. The people you remember names for easily are usually the people you feel something about: curiosity, attraction, admiration, even mild rivalry. Emotion acts like glue. It tags information as important and pushes it further into memory than neutral information ever gets pushed. That's why you can instantly recall the name of someone you found fascinating at a party, while forgetting the name of someone you talked to for the exact same amount of time but felt nothing about. Your brain isn't randomly choosing what to keep. It's keeping what felt meaningful. This explains something else you've probably noticed. You're far more likely to remember a name the second time you meet someone than the first, not because your memory improved overnight, but because the second meeting gives your brain a chance to attach the name to a face it has now seen before, a voice it has now heard before, a context it can now recall. The scaffolding builds slightly more each time until eventually the name stops floating and starts sticking. So the next time you forget a name 5 seconds after hearing it, you can let go of the embarrassment. It's not a sign that you weren't paying attention, and it's definitely not a sign that something is wrong with your memory. It's a sign that your brain, in that exact moment, was doing exactly what it evolved to do, treating an arbitrary label as less important than the dozens of other signals competing for the same small mental countertop. The fix isn't pressure, it's connection. Say the name out loud. Tie it to something you already know. Give it a hook to hold on to, and for the first time it might actually stay. You met someone new, and 5 seconds later their name was gone. Now you know it never really was a memory problem at all. It was a forgetting problem your brain was built to have, and the moment you understand why, forgetting it stops feeling like a flaw and starts feeling like the most